Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Linda, Eden for second. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, moving on, we're going to go to the zoning cases. The first one's ZBA-2023-0030, petition of Ronald Porter and Sue Graves. Kathy?
All right. Yes, this is a request to rezone a 1 point.
Got to have a motion for that. Sharon, second. Linda? Okay, now Kathy, thank you.
All right. Thank you. This is a request to rezone a 1.467 acre parcel from R2 medium density residential to RR rural residential. The petitioners own both the subject parcel, which contains a rental house, and the adjacent parcel to the east, which contains their permanent residence and is zoned rural residential. They wish to adjoin the approximate 0.467 acre timbered northern portion of the subject parcel with the parcel to the east that contains their residence. The zoning districts must be the same in order for the parcels to be combined, and thus the rezoning request. The remaining 1 acre with the rental house will then be sold to a family member. The use of both properties will remain the same. There were no consents or objections on file. This parcel is located on West Nagle Road in Hollis Township. There is an easement existing that allows approximately 168 feet of shared driveway off of West Nagle Road, and this will continue to serve both parcels. There were no comments from the Hollis Township Road Commissioner. Adjacent parcels on 3 sides are zoned R2 medium density residential and RR rural residential, and they are being used residentially. The request is consistent with the surrounding residential uses and zoning classifications, as well as the standards in the RR zoning district. This property has an existing septic system and public water. The health department had no objections. The request is consistent with the Peoria County Comprehensive Plan's designation of urban. Staff has recommended approval, and the zoning board also recommended approval unanimously.
Do we have any questions for Kathy? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, the next one's ZBA 2023-0033, petition of Teresa M. Holzhauser. Can I have a motion to put that on the floor? Eden, second. Matt, thank you. Kathy?
Yes. This is a request to divide an existing 17.956 acre parcel into tracts of approximately 5 acres, 5 acres, and 7.956 acres in order to settle an estate among family members. The parcel consists of a machine shed, cattle shed, single-family dwelling, and an agricultural field. The petitioner is proposing to split the proposed tracts in order to separate the ag uses from the existing single-family dwelling. The cattle shed and machine shed would be located on the northern proposed 5 acre tract, and that land would continue to be farmed. The single-family dwelling would be located on the southern proposed 5 acre tract, and the remaining 7.9 acres would be added to the existing adjacent parcel to the south, which is owned by the petitioner. There were no objections or consents on file. This parcel is located on North Evans Mill Road in Radnor Township. Both 5 acre parcels will retain frontage on North Evans Mill Road. The 7.9 acre tract will be added to the petitioner's existing 2 acre parcel and will not be a separate building parcel. There were no comments from the Radnor Township Road Commissioner. The parcel is zoned A1 Ag Preservation along with all surrounding properties. Surrounding land uses include single-family dwellings and agriculture. There are many parcels ranging between 5 and 11 acres, so that this is consistent with the area. The subject property is served by a private septic system and an existing shared well located on the petitioner's adjacent property to the south. The health department had no objection to this case. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation of agriculture and would allow the petitioner's family to continue farming while preserving the farmland that is there. Staff is recommending approval, and the zoning board also recommended approval unanimously.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. The last zoning case is ZBA 2023-0035, petition of Peoria County. Can I have a motion to put that on the floor? Matt? Okay. Sharon? Thank you. Kathy?
Actually, Andrew is going to give a short presentation for this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. On behalf of Planning and Zoning, I'd like to present some proposed text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, which is Chapter 20 of the Peoria County Code. Today's topic is going to be battery energy storage systems. So this is an emerging technology that we see across the country, and it's becoming more prevalent in central Illinois due to the closure of the Edwards power plant facility. So we have some sense of urgency in establishing this use in our community. As a reminder, the packet that you have has the proposed amendments. Anything underlined is new. Anything that has strike-through is being removed from the ordinance, and anything that has no modification will remain as such. So there's a number of different sections that we're proposing amendments to. Those include Article 5, Sections 5.2, 5.10, and 5.11. Those are the use regulations. Article 6, Sections 6.3, 6.11, and 6.12. Those are bulk regulations. Article 7, Section 7.4 and 7.6, which are fences and landscaping and buffer yards. And an entirely new section, which is Section 7.19, battery energy storage systems, and then some new definitions under Article 11, Section 11.1. There is one matter of housekeeping within these amendments that we missed in the last set of amendments, and so I'll just cover that when we get to that point. I'm not going to necessarily take these in the order they're listed here, but more in an order that helps explain the overall concept of what we're proposing. So battery energy storage systems can be a number of different things. We've kind of broken them down into a Tier 1 versus a Tier 2. And Tier 1 is anything that's going to be under 600 kilowatts. That does come from the International Fire Code, and that's what you're traditionally going to see more in a residential type unit. So your Tesla EV car chargers. So that's going to be maybe inside of a garage or inside of a structure. These Tier 2 facilities are more on a commercial scale. What they're doing is setting up almost like semi-trailers full of batteries that are pulling energy from the grid at non-peak hours and then sending it back to the grid at peak hours. These are used a lot in the western United States. For example, the state of California, when they have blackouts, they rely on these batteries to produce power back to the grid when they can't necessarily produce the power that's necessary. And so this is an emerging technology that we just haven't seen much of in the state of Illinois, and especially in Peoria County. As a reminder, when our ordinance does not have a specific use, it is not allowed. And so it's important that we get this use into our ordinance to allow for potential development to occur within Peoria County. So here's just some generic examples. These types of facilities can look and feel a lot of different ways. One of the benefits is that they don't necessarily have to be stacked in nice rows. They can use low-producing agricultural land or otherwise areas that maybe there aren't the appropriate envelopes to build on. They can kind of be fit to the particular property. So I mentioned that we have definitions and we have this Tier 2 type facility. The proposal for this new section is only going to be for standalone battery energy storage systems. And I say standalone because you will see them accessory to solar farms and wind farms. So as some of that energy is generated, the excess energy is going to be stored in those batteries and then sent back at various times. But we also will see these particular units of development as standalone buildings or structures per se. And so we want to make sure that we have rules specific for those. So these are going, yes?
Are the ones that are associated with wind farms and solar power do we already have language for that? Is that why we have them separate? Or?
We don't have specific language for them, but we do have our bulk regulations, our setbacks, our decommissioning plans. So a lot of the same concepts that are drawn for these battery energy storage systems, they're going to piggyback with what we already have in place on those particular properties. And so you might find at a future date when somebody comes forward and says, we want to do a solar farm for 4 megawatts of solar panels but also perhaps X amount of battery energy storage. So it would be included in those particular requests, whereas we will also see these sites as standalone sites. We have a definition for combustible vegetation because we do have a proximity for these systems from that vegetation. We have new definitions for standalone, and then we have new definitions for kind of cleanup language that we missed. But again, I'll get to that. So what I want to point out is the use regulations and where the Planning and Zoning Department is proposing these to be allowed. The Tier 1 battery energy storage system, like I said, that's generally going to be enclosed, maybe in someone's garage, maybe in an outbuilding, but really where you see those car chargers. The Tier 2 standalone is going to be proposed as a special use in our A2, which is agricultural use, and then our I1 and I2 industrial use districts. As you could tell by the picture, they really have that industrial type look to them. I liken maybe as you drive towards the Ameren facility just out past Grand Prairie Mall, and you kind of see some of these big boxes out there that are storing equipment. This is going to have a really similar type look to that in a lot of instances, and so we feel it's more appropriate in those industrial areas, not taking up commercial space, not in residential areas, but there could be appropriate settings when agriculture might be permissible. So again, this is only standalone. When it's in conjunction with those solar farms, with those wind farms, that's going to be a separate case, that's going to be a separate district. So our bulk regulations, we closely modeled the amendments that were brought forward as part of Public Act 102-1123 earlier this year, where we said the state is going to regulate solar and wind, and so we've really just cloned those all the way from right-of-way, property lines, distance from occupied dwellings and occupied community buildings, and then the maximum height of these structures. I will point out that 15 feet feels appropriate because the typical container, if you will, is going to be probably 10 to 12 feet. This allows for them to kind of put it on a little bit of a stilt or a raised foundation, but it's specific to allow for only a single stack. If we get to the point where developers want to put up a double stack type container, they would need to come forward for a variance. So I mentioned combustible vegetation. Anything that can ignite is going to have to be at least 10 feet away from these containers. The security fencing is going to have to be at least 7 feet tall. They will need a utility connection letter to make sure that Ameren, in this case, has signed off, that they have all the infrastructure in place to support these. Fire safety is key. We don't necessarily have this in our community, so the fire departments are going to be critical in making sure that they're appropriately trained, that they have these operation plans, that they know what it entails to respond to this type of development in the event that there could be a situation. They're going to have road use agreements, making sure that whatever equipment comes down the roads is pre-approved, and then our EcoCat, which is the IDNR, Department of Natural Resources review to make sure they're not going in environmentally sensitive areas. We have fencing and then traditional buffer yards. I mentioned that was a section we looked at. Security fencing, 7 feet tall. That's very consistent with our other sections. But we also added transitional buffer yards in here because in the event that they are placed in agriculturally zoned districts, it's important to note that the agricultural zone district, the A2, does allow for single-family residences. And so we want to make sure that there is adequate screening if that's the case. We don't want it to be, oh, we were here first, so now nobody wants to build next to us. They're going to be required to put up that vegetative screening in compliance with our ordinance or request a variance and explain why they don't feel it's necessary. We do have a decommissioning plan because, as always, we don't want to be stuck with this type of facility or this type of development in the event that it is abandoned. So this decommissioning plan closely mirrors the original decommissioning plans that we did have for our solar and wind farms before the state made some modifications. In that case, facility abandonment is a 12-month period, and decommissioning is removal of all structures, removal of all kind of substructure or debris that's underneath the ground up to 4 feet. Vegetation must be restored, and then it's important to note that financial security must remain valid for the life of the project and renewed every 4 years. Costs change. We want to make sure that our financial security agreements cover those costs as, you know, inflation or any other variety of reasons could warrant an additional or even a smaller amount of financial security being in place. So again, these are very similar to solar. We're going to see a lot of them accessory to solar, so a lot of these rules closely mirror the solar rules and regulations. So just want to point that out. We did meet with developers, potential developers I should say, explain to them what our process was for research, identified what their concerns might be. I do want to make mention of a letter that I distributed. This came in after the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. So as you know, the Zoning Board of Appeals is our fact-finding body. That's where all public testimony and comment comes in. We're not to consider any information that comes in after the fact, but I just wanted to make light that there was a letter that was distributed to the department that they asked what the county board members or land use committee members received. We did work with this group extensively before these amendments were filed, and ultimately did not hear anything from them, and so they're kind of reacting rather than being proactive with some of their comments. But I just certainly wanted to make mention of it because I think it's worthwhile. Pass it back to Mr. Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Chairman Rosenbaum. So Andrew, just for, I know there was calls, Chairman Rosenbaum got a phone call, so did I, and staff. Just for the record, what this letter, some of the concerns staff had, the ordinance still would allow even the concerns that they had in the process. So one of the things was the 15 feet, and they might have new technology or whatever, or on Edwards stackable. They can still request a special use or a variance to come. There was concerns over an interpretation of what the distance was. I better let you just, I mean, that way everybody understands what they were concerned about. There's still processes in place.
Right, so we did meet with not just the company that the firm that wrote the letter is representing, but also another potential developer who you know, plans to come to our area. They did have concerns about the height, and as I explained in our presentation, we feel that the single stack is kind of it's not a one size fits all, but it's going to allow for that initial level of development. And should they want to double stack, triple stack, who knows what these are going to look like in the future, let's make sure they go through the variance process so we can educate ourselves more on why they need to do that and what that's really going to look like. There was some questions on the landscaping plan. We feel that that's, again, can be addressed through a variance process if they determine they don't want to put the landscaping in. It's traditionally not going to be required in those industrial areas because they're going to be adjacent to industrial uses, but we did feel it was fair to the surrounding property owners to require that traditional, that landscaping buffer yard. There were some questions, let me just sit back. They thought that the setback language could be more specific. We have said that it's to the closest, I guess, closest point on any given facility. We're considering that, planning and zoning is considering that to be the fence, you know, the outermost layer of it, not necessarily the stack itself. But we just want to make sure that that's been mentioned. And then some of it was in regards to, you know, the fire department and the road officials and them having the ability to sign off on these types of projects before it comes before the Zoning Board of Appeals and Land Use Committee and the County Board. That's been a best practice of the counties for, you know, all sorts of different development and uses, and we feel it's best to have those conversations and have everything hashed out prior to making it to the public hearing, and then we, you know, go back and forth. Let's get all that hashed out and then come forward with your proposal. So appreciate the comment, Mr. Dillon, and that's really the basis for the conversations we've had a little bit on the side.
Do we have any questions for Andrew? We're all going to get educated, aren't we, as the time goes on? Okay. And we did, let's see, yes, that one we got a motion for it, so if there's no questions, we'll vote on it. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Okay, we're back to, we've got with Tri-County, right? That's not on there? Oh, that's a resolution, okay. Okay, we're up to our resolution, the 2023 Peoria County Multi-Jurisdiction Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. And that's Rima.
All right, that's me. My name is Rima. I'm with the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, and I'm here to briefly present about this plan. It is a bit of a mouthful, multi-jurisdictional, multi-hazard. So the main purpose for this is to identify, assess, and mitigate hazard risk to better protect the people and the property within the county. And this does refer to both natural and man-made hazards. So the background for what this plan means is that, or rather how it came into play. This is a document that we have to update every 5 years. Tri-County in the past, we used to be separate, so we used to have our own plan, and there was Peoria County's plan. But a couple years ago, I got with Andrew and Kathy, and we talked about combining them for just a better fluid option for the whole region. So this is part of a regional initiative, and we did get the funding for that. Tri-County applied for that funding in 2021 for the planning process, and we were awarded that funding. We did select 2 consultants, so one main one, American Environmental, and WSP as a sub-consultant. And what WSP brought in is they have specialty in the community rating system. So that is a floodplain management initiative that Peoria County has. You might be familiar with that. So they ensured that we have all of that correct language within this plan so we can maintain that program that provides incentives within the county. Let's see. So I believe in your packet you have the executive summary. The actual plan is almost 450 pages, so I did not bring that, but it is on our Tri-County website. There's so much detail on there, and feel free to read that if you'd like. And so WSP completed that plan and submitted it to the Illinois Emergency Management Agency. And after correcting some edits, they have approved the next steps, and the next steps is me talking about this plan and making sure it gets approved in each of the jurisdictions. And I believe there's 8 or 9 jurisdictions in Peoria County, and I can answer any questions.
Okay, before we have questions, I think I need to get somebody to put the motion on the floor. Linda, Eden for a second. Okay, now we can ask questions. Anybody have any questions for Rima? Okay, do you have anything else to add?
I think that's about it. And I'll be here for the Peoria County Board meeting as well for the second option.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. We are now at public comment. Do we have anybody for that? Okay, anybody have anything for miscellaneous tonight? Okay, meeting adjourned.